welcome in everybody for our security sessions discussion today. We have a great topic talking about cybersecurity for small and medium-sized enterprises. As always, reached out to great people in the community that bring thought leadership to these topics. Really, what we're going to discuss today is the idea of, in an era where technology is seamlessly intertwined into every business, how do we safeguard ourselves from the ever-present cyber threats? Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbones of our economy, and they're fueling innovation, generating employment, driving economic growth. They have unique challenges when it comes to remaining secure and growing, especially when it comes to expansion. With us today, we have Stas, Will, and Hadass. And Hadass, if you wouldn't mind, maybe introduce yourself and let us know what you're working on.
Sure. I'm Hadass. I'm the CISO at M1, which is a fintech based in Chicago. And I also do a little side hustle of fractional CISO work for different businesses to just help them, and actually SMBs, not SMEs, but help new companies kind of figure out what they need to do in order to get secure.
Thank you so much for being here. Will, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Will Kosovsky. So 20 plus years in the cybersecurity industry, more than half of that's been spent working in consulting and managed security services. Pretty much have worked in every part of an organization that exists, from doing sales support to delivery, R&D, operations, product marketing, product management. Doesn't matter. I've kind of ran and done it. And similar to Hadass, I've build vCISO billets and done work with SMB companies and even MSSPs and MSPs wanting to build programs out.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And Stas?
Hi, I'm Stas Pachuca. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Compyl. We're an information security automation platform. My background is information security. I've been in this space for 20 plus years. I've been a CISO multiple times. I've got a degree in every accreditation pretty much in this space. And I specifically focused on financial services and highly regulated organizations from a security perspective.
Hadass, I'm going to toss this right over to you to start. When we think about small and medium-sized enterprises compared to larger enterprises, what are some of the specific challenges that are faced when it comes to cybersecurity? And how can small and medium-sized enterprises kind of make steps to improve and mature their programs?
It depends. I will say I am a recovering attorney, so I'm probably going to answer that question, any question with "it depends." I think that it depends on where anybody is in their cybersecurity maturity journey. So a large enterprise might actually be further behind than a smaller enterprise, because they've built themselves up to this huge enterprise without ever considering security. And now they have to backtrack and figure out how to implement it. Whereas usually smaller enterprises are actually newer and have been building their entire program on a secure basis. So it really does depend. It also depends on the industry that they're in, and what kind of data they house, and what the business that they're doing is, and how secretive it is, and whether it's something like, if they're no offense to anybody who makes hamburgers for a living, but if they're making hamburgers for a living, maybe their data is their customers' purchase history, which might not be as sensitive of data as, say, a fintech, where it's people's actual personal information and their data on their financial status. So I think that I think maybe the question of smaller versus larger isn't really the right frame. It's really, where are you in your cybersecurity maturity, and what are your next steps to become even more secure?
It's interesting to, just as you say that, it makes me think through that process, having worked with both large enterprise and very small businesses. It's a lot easier, I guess, maybe not easier, but the checklist is the same regardless of how big you are, but maybe it's a little easier to work through when there's only 20 people at the company, right?
Well, not only 20 people, but also less integrations, right? When you're just starting out, your environment isn't even going to be as large as, say, I mean, the difference between some brand new startup that's just got a few servers in AWS or whatever versus
no mainframe.
Nike, it's going to be a much different environment to try and build out security.
Yeah, and that cat's kind of already out of the box for a lot of these organizations. So pulling them back in is super difficult.
And also all of their tech debt that they have, and the stuff that they don't even know about because they didn't even think to do asset management 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Do people
I was just about to say we're going to talk about asset management again. I don't think we've had these where we didn't talk about asset management.
It's always like it's such a pain point, right? Like it's such a pain to do, and nobody wants to do it, but yet it's like the most important thing that you have to do. And
Yeah.
How could
I think as I think about this, and I understand what the three of you are getting to, right? Bigger kids, bigger problems, right? So potentially a larger organization could maybe have larger problems, and that makes a lot of sense. But I think when you think about resources and maybe kind of buy-in from a financial perspective, potentially that small to medium-sized enterprise potentially could have some issues implementing a program, or maybe it's just expertise that they lack in-house. So when you kind of look at it through that lens, Stas, and maybe you could kind of bring some context to this, is lack of expertise could be a major vulnerability for an organization. Relying on consultants or third parties could be a challenge. How in 2023 can these small to medium-sized enterprises maybe strengthen their security program with maybe limited resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all I'm assuming we've all seen the Google ad now, the 750,000 employee shortage for cybersecurity. I mean, I think I see it every single day in one way or another. But yeah, I mean, there's a shortage of information security folk, full stop. And then there's also, there's also a shortage on the side that it's even if you do manage to get somebody in information security, if you get like a manager or an analyst, doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily be able to cover all aspects of it. I mean, this space is so broad, mile wide, inch deep, but the depth really does depend on how the organization is structured and what's important to them, which is going to Hadat's point. But I think realistically, organizations need to understand what their skills are, and if there are gaps, then they need to find creative ways to fill those gaps. I think if outsourcing to a third party or getting a fractional CISO or something along those lines helps, then they should look into doing that, and it's more cost effective. Tooling is not often the solution, but if you can find a tool that can bring together information in an organization into one platform, or maybe two, and consolidate some of that, then that's definitely worth looking into that as well. But going out and buying more tooling just for the sake of it is not the way forward as well.
I think that the industry is going to change, honestly. And by industry, I don't mean security industry. I mean, technology industry is going to change, where security is going to become part and parcel of everybody's job. And so we're not going to be looking for security practitioners to secure our environment. We're going to be looking for DevOps that have security embedded in their knowledge base. We're going to look for developers who understand security and understand SAST and DAST as well, who are going to understand that it is part of their job to behave securely and to code securely and to implement securely. And then security is going to be, and it's kind of how I build my programs anyway, especially in smaller environments, which is the security department isn't what's providing security. We're providing security as a service to the company. So we are there for expertise when the easy stuff gets hard. We are there for when issues arise, how do we deal with those, and then take preventive steps for the future of those types of issues. But I think that, that job gap is kind of I hate using this term, but misinformation, in that it's all the same, almost the same level and skill and resource. And what we're going to do to alleviate that job gap or that skills gap is actually add those skills into other jobs that are already in the environment, hands-on, having to do the work.
I was having this conversation just the other day about what you just said, which you know, a lot of people get caught up in security has like their job is secure, like as a security professional we should be doing security. I was like, at the end of the day, let's take firewalls. A security person doesn't need to manage the firewall. Let the IT department manage it. The security group says how it should be managed, and then they audit it, right, to make sure it's being done that way. The same thing, you know, I mean, we can joke about how developers aren't taught to code securely. You know, that's something we've been fighting for years. But if you teach them to you don't have to employ a security coder or a dev person, but you define your SDLC to be secure. You put your DAST, SAST, your real-time pen testing, all of that stuff. You build a program around it, and then you manage the program. And to that point, you no longer have to. The skills gap becomes the problem instead of like we have an opportunity now, based on what Hadas is saying, and I completely agree, for more generalists to become, you know, and not have to be like, I'm a generalist, I love it, but I've also been doing it for 20 years. That's why I'm a generalist. It's, you know, a lot of people when they're young, they start and they get focused on one certain area about one thing, and you know, maybe not thinking about being a generalist or understanding how to apply security to multiple areas. And we have an opportunity now because we have that middle of the diamond in that, you know, which is there's just a big gap of people. We've got a lot of really expensive, really experienced resources, and we got a whole lot of people that want to get into the industry. But that meat right there in the middle is where the gap, I think, exists.
But
Yeah,
also,
and for now, I'm sorry, go ahead, Stas.
oh no, I was just gonna actually just reiterate your point. Is that a lot of the times, like people working in organizations don't often know the type of data that they're even interacting with, or the type of data that they have access to, right? I mean, the amount of times that I've talked to developers in financial institutions that don't understand like the importance of like position data, for example, like they don't even know what it is, right? So they have no idea why they should be protecting it or what, you know, what they're looking at. And the same thing with like health records, or, you know, if we look at what happened with Cambridge Analytica, right, a few years ago, and like everyone was kind of like, oh, like what can they possibly do with like 90 data points from Facebook, right? And it's like, turns out you can do quite a lot with it, like over
remember all those surveys you filled out about your favorite artist and your first car, and oh hey, remember all those wallets of questions you have to answer to prove you are who you are?
Yeah, security questions.
Well,
yeah, I also think I do agree that there are, especially for smaller companies, right? There's smaller company, smaller budget. But I also think that a smaller company, less landscape. And, you know, I actually just posted on LinkedIn this past week that I'm almost sick of hearing CISOs and security professionals crying about not having enough money and not getting enough budget. That's everybody's problem. Every leader in an organization doesn't get all of the budget that they're asking for. And that's your job. Your job is to say, okay, I'm fighting for this much money. I got this much, which is the same as I wanted or less. And now I have to understand what my priorities are and how to make this company as secure as possible with the resources that I have. And sometimes that means you bring in a consultant. Sometimes that means you bring in managed services. Sometimes it means you tell the company, hey, this is too few resources. And so now you are accepting the risk, and this is what the risk is. But that's just business.
Yeah,
that's business. And and if you want to be in the seat of a CISO, that means you have to understand the priorities of the business, how the business makes money, and where you fit in the grand scheme of that, so that you're protecting the company, so that everybody has a job tomorrow.
Yeah, and the risk appetite of that organization is super important to understand.
Right.
And most organizations, I mean, I've been in so many organizations where like the security and the compliance teams are just so not well regarded, because it's always computer says no, and they don't really understand what the business is and how they make money. And it always has to be a reasonable level of security for the risk appetite of that organization, and so many people don't.
Yeah, I preach that all the time, to especially to those getting into the or those that like I think I did another podcast like on individual contributors versus CISO and leaders and like sort of the mindset. And you get a lot of people, not at the top who don't understand that, and they're really unhappy because they don't get the cool tool they want, or they don't have the, they don't understand. Well, at the end of the day, the business's job is to sell their widget, whatever that widget is,
And
not
make
to do
money doing
security.
that.
Yeah, and make money
Right.
doing it. Like, it's not security. Like, you're a byproduct. I've said this before. One of my former colleagues coined it. It's security is airbags and seatbelts. It shouldn't be sexy. It should just be what has to be done. It's just necessary, right? And how
But
secure
that's
do you
not to
want it to
say
be?
it can't be sexy.
No, it can be, sure, but the thing I say is you get the security professionals who all feel like they're SEAL Team 6 and doing Black Ops and all of this, really like they're super
And then
secret
they're
Royal
angry.
Rangers.
Nobody pays any attention to me. I'm just like, all
It's
right,
like,
go back to your corner.
yeah, it's like, this is cool and all, but not really. Like, the company you work for, their job is to pump gas from here to there, or their job is to hold your money in a place, so when you need to buy something, it's there. It's not to feed your ego.
Hadass, I'm curious how you think about this, because I think that's a really interesting kind of viewpoint, right? There may be a security gap of professionals right now, but maybe how we fill that is actually just training up some other positions, right? And I really like that kind of thought. That makes a lot of sense to me. But how do you think about overall security and awareness training in an organization? Because I haven't really seen anything, and please let me know if there is something great. I haven't seen anything great that really kind of helps, not like just check the box, like, hey, we ran the program and the person passed, but like kind of raise the level in an organization to understand why it's so important. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I have some really strong opinions about security awareness in a
I'd love to
company.
hear them.
My first is, can we please stop phishing internally? It's such a waste of time, and it makes every single one of your employees hate you. They feel like they're being tricked by their own security department. They don't think it's funny. They don't think it's clever. Stop it. What you can do, though, is reward people for pointing out whatever they think is a security issue, and then blog about it, announce it, make everybody aware that this wonderful person pointed out this potential security issue, and isn't that great? Everybody's job is to keep us protected. So reward that out loud. And then don't embarrass anybody. Like if somebody either reports something that's not a security issue, don't poo-poo it, like still celebrate that they've reported it. If somebody's made a mistake and has created a security issue in your environment, it's totally okay to reward that person as well for being clever enough to help us prevent that from ever happening again. As long as that person isn't a repeat offender over and over and over again, like, you shouldn't. Security is hard, man. There was this, I went to this, whatever, like security seminar or something. I want to say 7 years ago. It's definitely pre-COVID. And one of the people who spoke was talking about his security company. And I'm not going to name the company, but I'm going to tell you, it is one of the top, like, well-known names in security. And he was saying that they had a security awareness training, like they had their annual security awareness training. And 1 week later, they did a phishing test in the company. And this company's main job is to provide security and security awareness for others. And they failed at 60%. That is a company whose main focus is security, and they failed a week after their security training. So what does that tell me? That tells me that anybody can fail security tests, and anybody can fail meeting their security requirements. And so shaming people is not the way to go about it. The way to go about security awareness is make sure that you have as much and as good of automation as you possibly can in your environment, so that Your people don't have to worry about clicking links because they're going to click the links, that you have enough monitoring in your environment so that if they click those links and your automation doesn't catch it, your monitoring does. And then teach people to be kind but skeptical. Everybody at your company wants to help. They want to help their fellow employees. They want to help your customers. They want other people to feel comfortable and confident to be able to do their job or to get whatever services your company offers. So they're going to be kind. They are going to be kind to each other, but they should still be skeptical. Oh, I want to help you, but I still need to know who you are.
Yeah, I use that when I do training all the time. Like, they're going to identify with you personally, and a lot of times people aren't the people who are, like you said, they're not internal, they're not insider risks trying to steal espionage your data out. They're just trying to be nice and help the next, help this person that called them, but they do need to have that level of skepticism. I will say though, I have seen improvements. I think, we've gotten past the days of where doing a 130-minute session each year is not, we all know you have to train regularly. Yep. And it has to be entertaining, it has to be engaging, and that could be a bunch of different ways, right? So there's ways that you can actually, and I love the idea of celebrating the victories for everybody, right? And
so one of the ways I train is I see what's going on in the news. I look at security news, Ars Technica, and like all of it, like all of the different threat mags, and anything that is pertinent to my industry, I will call attention to it in our Slack channels and write a little blog, or write a blog in Confluence and say, hey, did you guys hear about this amazing security thing? And say it in a language that people understand it. So it's not super technical, and just say, this is what happened. This is how it happened. This is how you can protect it. M1 or whatever company that, I'm doing this for, from this happening in our environment. And so it's like ripped from the headlines, but it's still education and we still do the security awareness training. It's obviously still required, but I just don't think that that's as helpful as calling attention to real world incidents that can resonate with the people who work for you.
Right. And to Stats' point, though, it's great to use that data that, hey, if I got a bunch of information about, your Facebook profile, or, people like we found a bunch of titles and email addresses. Who cares? Well, who cares? Here's what happens if I use that. Here's how because we all think like the baddies, and everybody else is just going to work wanting to help everybody, right? So by putting that context in, I remember years ago when we first started getting into this OT security stuff, there was like a room full of people talking about, well, what would you do if you could have, like, oh, I'm going to add too much sugar to the recipe and mess it up, or I'm going to do, and I was like, no, I'm going to turn off all those security sensors and I'm going to overflow that thing until bolts start popping. And I can blow the building up or cause physical harm. Like, what's the worst thing I can possibly think of to do with this? And most people don't think that way. So by showing them, oh yeah, your little puzzle piece of data, you don't think it's important, but here's what we do when you piece it all together. And then, China builds an airplane, right? So, I mean,
for sure.
As you were saying something.
And I'm all for the like no blame culture. Like with that's, that I've been behind that forever. But I don't know if you guys just saw, but like VirusTotal got hacked yesterday, and 6,500 accounts, including government, public, whatever, like just tons of accounts have been exposed. But that was phishing. And as much as it shouldn't be an issue, and business email compromise shouldn't be an issue, and this is stuff that we've been talking about since the inception of email, it's still an issue. And for like what I do think that phishing, I do think that phishing training is important. I have seen good results off of it. I think it has to be very interactive, and I think it has to be forward thinking, and it can't be made that you're trying to purposely catch out people in an unreal scenario. But I do think it is important. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought Hadass, I thought your take on that was interesting. But yeah.
Yeah.
I still think that like phishing your employees is just, it causes a bad taste in their mouth. And there are ways to teach people about phishing that isn't, and I am phishing you. There's I think it's 7 security habits. I'm going to look it up, but there's an excellent book that talks about like what to do and how to teach security better in your environment, so that you can still teach about phishing and prevent phishing. Like one of the things is like when you're reading email, frown. And it sounds so silly, but if your facial expression is one of skepticism or grumpiness, I guess, then you are going to be more skeptical when you're reading your email and not trust it as much. You teach people not to open emails from outside sources after lunch, because they are more likely to just go through the process without thinking through it at the end of the day. So all of these different habits that you teach people are going to be better than sending them really savvy phishing tests, because realistically, we're no longer getting emails from Nigerian princes that are misspelled. The phishing lures are so much more sophisticated that even highly skilled and technical and secure aware professionals are not
Right.
are not bypassing the fishes, right? Like they are getting fished. And so sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you're bringing up a great point that I think is worth highlighting, because everything you're saying is spot on, but there's something to this that I think a lot of organizations don't have, and that is somebody to actually do the education.
That's the
I mean, if I go back to my master's degree decades ago, like I did my last project, looking at the human element, and the one thing, I discovered then, and I've seen throughout my career, is you need to educate just like you really want them to learn. You can't just buy a tool and yeah, it's great that they can see a thing. You can't do just a phishing thing. You have to actually invest in people who understand the landscape and the technology and understand how to train people. There's this
all right, well, $14.89 can buy you the hardcover copy of Well Aware, Master the 9 Cybersecurity Habits to Protect Your Future, written by George Finney. And you can buy one for each one of your employees and use their education budget for it. So less than $15 to educate your, and then you don't have to write that up. They can read that. It's already written.
It's interesting because it seems like what I think in different ways, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like where we're landing is kind of in 2023, and as we go forward, we're no longer in a place where like security can just kind of make a visit once a year, kind of run your test and then leave the organization. There has to just be an attempt, and maybe there's multiple ways to do this, but to raise the level and implement a bit of a security culture throughout your organization. And until, I guess, employees understand that, they really do play a big part in this, that's where maybe some vulnerability can be had. Will, I thought you brought up a great point. Maybe some of the challenges are just the training side of it, right? Having somebody. Will, I'm curious, have you seen any new techniques or training kind of approaches that are truly unique, or is it really just you have to get creative?
I mean, there's the stuff that I've seen that I personally like are things that they understand it's about short bursts of training continually. So, a 2 to 3 minute video once every 2 weeks that kind of highlights, and they do it in a entertaining fashion, right? So it's not like you sitting there and clicking. Also, and I've worked with a couple companies where we do gamification of this kind of stuff. So, hey, let's teach you what these words mean and how this is done. And then we're going to put you in a scenario where you get to be the secret squirrel, SEAL team guy, and choose how you would get in and work through that. So I think those interactive things I've even done personally. essentially like a D&D session, where, you know, I run through different characters. We say, hey, here's the types of, and you educate them on personas of different types of attackers, and you let the users pick who they want to be. And then, okay, now how do you want to, choose your target? And then they helps them get into that mindset. So I think there are more ways to be more effective and more interactive. But again, to the point, I think there's just so many businesses who are just like, I just want to check this box. I'm going to buy this product, or I'm going to put this phishing tool that's going to go on there. And then, yeah, everything. And then, you know, are we going to get any better with it or not? Right. Because honestly, you could probably just, I think most companies of a certain size, you know, who can afford it, could probably just hire an actual individual as a, you know, a security trainer, and probably see a pretty big impact. Just having that person go to work every day and, you know, breed that security culture and do that. I mean, I know as CISOs and you know, everybody in security, we try to be part of that, but like everybody else has a day job, and to actually commit time daily to be, you know, my job is to make sure everybody else is doing a better job. I think that would work.
I've seen dedicated roles for security training and business change in organizations for sure. It's very subjective as well, right? I mean, it's also the tolerance of the organization. Like I've seen so many organizations that have slowed down their awareness training just because they can't get the language right, or like the I is in the wrong place, or like, you know, whatever. And it really just like you kind of just lose the point of the whole thing. And yeah, I don't know. It's still, I think it's still very difficult.
I don't know. I think that's all harkens back to the first question where we talked about how we do more with less. And the answer is you make sure that everybody knows that part of their job is to be security. And you spell that out for them in their job description, and you explain to them exactly what being secure means. And like anymore, to me, it feels a lot like, you know, security training is a lot like the HR training we had in the 90s, where it was just kind of hokey and everybody's like, oh, phishing again, you know, and like they watch their videos, but they have something else going on in the background and just click through. And it feels like a chore. And anything that feels like a chore in trying to teach people stuff, they're not really learning. You know,
it needs to be targeted too. As I mean, I'm sure all of us have had to take that training and go seriously, and like we can click through it in 30 seconds. I'm like, if you're going to train me, in my experience, or you're going to train a developer whose job, like train them on their role and how their role impacts security, instead of just doing you know, this generic, hey, make sure you don't write your password on the thing, and make sure you don't have, you know, clean desk.
Don't use the same passwords. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, tell this person here.
Don't run an admin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have seen some training that's really segmented by department, and I agree with you, Will. I think that could have you know, a real positive impact. But I wanted to shift. So I have a question that I want to ask the three of you and kind of get a feel for where you think this is going to land. So when it comes to fintech cybersecurity, what trends do you believe will have the most significant impact on organizations this year? And we'll start with you.
Within fintech specifically, I actually, here's what I think, but I'd like Hadas to correct me. I think because we look at that space as being smaller, more agile, lots of startups, and we've sort of seen what happens when you're in that space and ignore things like regulations and security controls. That to me is a big deal. I think there's still a strong mentality in the startup community to just kind of do the technology and then add the security afterwards. So I'm hoping that's not the case in the fintech space, but I can't say I haven't seen that that's not the case. That's what I would ask to head on.
I mean, I'm in fintech, and
yeah,
we have
your
security,
company
so
would stand
I don't, you know. So what is your answer then? What is the trend?
Well, I think the you know, the regulations that are going to be impacting those businesses, and whether or not they actually comply and do the right things that they should be.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there are regulations already, and I would tell you honestly, my experience with those regulations, and this is not just in fintech, this is in every industry I've been in that is regulated by especially a governmental body. Those governmental bodies are, 5 to 10 years behind what actually needs to be done. And so, yeah, I suppose it's okay to like enforce it for people who aren't paying attention. But I think most startups are with engineers now who know the necessity of security. And so I feel like the regulatory stuff is actually just sometimes security theater instead of real security. For me, I would say it's going to be somewhere between AI stuff and zero trust. Zero trust, of course, is going to be prevalent in every industry. And the more you can do that in your environment, the better off you are. And especially if you're a startup and you start building from there.
Start from
instead
the
of having
ground
to,
one. That's the best way to do it.
instead of having to retrofit, you're just going to have a more secure environment that is going to have issues impact it less because of the zero trust. And then I say AI powered threat detection because I've also heard of different companies getting hit with AI powered threats. And so and ML powered threats. And it just, that to me, you're going to end up playing whack-a-mole a lot and abusing your resources time, which is going to exhaust them and prevent them from doing exciting things and also prevent them from doing other critical things in your environment. And so if you're not leveraging AI and ML for threat detection or for creating different security capabilities in your environment, you're going to be so far behind, especially even 3 years from now. So I know everybody's afraid of having AI and in their environment, and they have a right to be, especially because of the data leakage that you're going to have in your environment if you don't monitor that. But if you think that you're preventing your people from using AI in your environment, you aren't. So you should find a way to embrace it so that people use it carefully and find a way to have your, especially developers who are, geeks and love solving problems, find new and creative ways to use it to bolster your security program.
Yeah, as somebody working in MSS for a long time, ML and AI has been decades, we've been using that and trying to make it better. And we've just hit that exponential shift now where it's just really, really valuable.
It's also fun. Like, realistically, it doesn't matter. Like, even if you're, just like a nascent user of tech, it's fun for you. And all the way up through, the real like PhDs in tech geekery, like it's fun to play with. And so unleashing carefully, but unleashing your devs and your employees into this new pool to play with the new toys is going to be exciting.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's my turn. I assume it is.
Yeah,
it is your turn. It's officially your turn.
I mean, that's the thing with technology, right? It's ever changing, and it's not going to wait for somebody to say yes or no to it. It's just people either embrace it or they don't, and if you don't embrace it, you get left behind. Like, just how it goes. And so, yeah, I mean, Hadass, I agree with you. And the other thing I was just gonna like, it's funny because none of us said the same thing, which is great. Mine was going to be 0 days because of AI. We're already starting to see that, and we're already finding bugs in software like 20 years old and things like that. And I think it's just we're gonna see a ramp up of that towards the end of the year as people start using it more and more. That would be my prediction.
Yeah, and we have to be really careful of that too, because what AI is doing is making it easier for anybody to be a hacker and anybody to be a threat. And so the tools are becoming easier on the other side. So we have to do stuff on our end to prevent that. And I think between ZTA and AI powered threat detection. Like that's
absolutely.
where we have to go.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, I want to thank the three of you for making time today. This was a fun conversation. And I think, you know, it's interesting when we started off and we were talking about kind of the small to medium sized enterprises, you know, we took a deep dive into the training side and the phishing side, but I think we brought a lot of kind of good light to the conversation. And I think viewers will be able to take away some ways to improve maybe their way of approaching phishing and training, understanding the importance of it and best ways to kind of you know, get people to buy in versus forcing people to just do this thing to check a box. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to having three of you back on another episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.